It's caucus time.
It's caucus time. And you skipped that. We have barely started. You and your caucus time transition. My goodness. Welcome on in, folks. It is, in fact, caucus time. It is a great day to have a conversation, and we're going to break the internet. We haven't done this yet, have we, gentlemen? We've got all of the co-hosts. Well, not all of the co-hosts. Half of the co-hosts are here from caucus of caucus past. Caucus-I past. I prefer to add an I if I can, just to the plural of everything to annoy people. That started in high school debate just for fun. But we've got, not only are you stuck, folks, with me and Mason Mohan this week, we have pulled in our old buddy, Andrew Muller, who subs for Mason every once in a while, and also was the Mason before Mason existed, at least as far as caucus is considered. So y'all remember him. We've got all three of us today. Guys, how are you doing?
Well, this is not the first time we've had all three of us. We did climate change.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
thought in my mind, I was thinking there's an episode we've done before. But Andrew, welcome back. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Ryan, I'm sorry you guys have a lot of rain up there in Missouri. It's really nice down here in Florida, but I imagine it's colder up there probably than here. It's 80 degrees in Florida, so I don't know what you guys are dealing with up there. It's probably colder, right?
It depends on the day this week, than last week, and probably next week as well. It's just 80 and then 40 and then 80 and then 40 and then tornado and then monsoon and then sunny, beautiful day.
We're in the beautiful Missouri season of no one knows what's happening, including the weather. And then the meteorologists really prove that you can, in fact, get paid to not know anything and yet still make a good living. But that's where we are. No, it's the nice thing is cold enough for us to, not really break too bad of a sweat in building the ark, which is what it feels like we need to do with all the rain we've had here. So that's kind of a nice thing. But oh boy. Hey, folks, let me start it off here. We got a good conversation, a great podcast coming up. I'll go ahead and point you to a couple of things. Go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. And you will find all of the resources here. That's where you're going to get all the episodes, all the links, all the stuff that we talk about. If there's a pertinent link that you want to dive into more reading after this, that's where you're going to go and get it. Unauthorizedcaucus.com. You can also, if you're watching this on Rumble, hit the big like button and follow. You can subscribe to us there. If you're a podcast listener, I'd love your 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, Spotify. Go ahead and do that for us. That goes a long way to putting these conversations in the hands or in the pockets of more people. And then, of course, if you want to support what we are doing, there are a few different ways you can do that. Go on over to the notes of this episode. You'll find it. You've got a big fat promo code to use at trexinc.com. Lots of cool apparel and mugs, Americana stuff there. You can also support us with Wide Awake clothing. There's a link down in the description below. If you want to support us, you can do that. Of course, on Substack or Rumble, you can just support us directly. If you'd like to help us kind of make this grow and go in different directions, that is a great way to do it. So all of it there, unauthorizedcaucus.com. Go to the links down below in this podcast episode, or if you're watching the video, you'll find them all there. But today's episode is something, it's a conversation that we're certainly going to start, but not finish. Because after the checkered things we had in the last week or so, we got good victories in Florida, the Florida 1st and 6th district. Congratulations, Andrew. You guys elected a Republican. Now, how good of a Republican he'll be, that we'll see. I know Randy Fine was the 6th district. Who was running in the 1st district? Remind me.
So Jimmy Petronas, Florida's former CFO.
Former CFO. Here, I didn't realize we were electing mobsters. Petronas, that's fun. Did he carry a shot-off shotgun with him? I'm kidding. I don't know. Jimmy.
He has that vibe.
Jimmy, if you're listening, please don't come for me. I'm only joking. Good results in Florida. Wisconsin passed voter ID. That was big, but we lost the Supreme Court race to the terrible liberal Susan Crawford. That was actually a big loss, not even remotely close. 10 points, and they were still counting a little bit, but 10 points is where we're at. It's kind of got, I think, a lot of people reeling, and we are understanding, wait a minute, okay, midterms are right around the corner, but Donald Trump will not be on the ballot. In fact, despite his lovely trolling of the media over a third and or fourth term, however you want to call it, he's not going to be on the ballot ever again. I don't think that any of that's serious. He really is just distracting them from harassing the cabinet secretaries, I'm pretty sure. But where do we go from here? Because we took a beating in Wisconsin on that Supreme Court seat. And as a result, we're going to lose a couple of House seats. I'm sure. I don't know if that means we lose the House majority. But traditional politics has to find a way to intertwine with the Trump era of politics, and the Trump swing voters, who are a very unique breed. They did not show up in Wisconsin, at least not enough to flip that race. So whose fault was that? Is it Brad Schimmel? Is it our fault? Is it their fault? Do we need civics lessons? These are all the things that we want to get into today, because I think it really is interesting. I might be excited about J.D. Vance and the future of the Republican Party without Donald Trump, but I think there's a lot of voters who don't share that same thing. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think we can afford really even another term until we get some major changes, maybe more than the 4 years ahead that we still have, or 3.5. So that's what we want to talk about today. What are the lessons, and what do we start to do? Because it's up to you and us, you all and us, as the conservatives who are paying attention to all of these things, to start shaking people awake and saying, hey, here's what you need to be looking at, or here's what we need to be working at. Because before we know it, I mean, we're almost halfway through 2025. People are going to be announcing and starting to run and gather money. And then the primaries are going to kick off next spring. And here we are. We're a year away from some of the earliest primaries for 2026. We better get on it now. So what lessons does Wisconsin what lessons do Wisconsin and Florida and some of the other things we're seeing have for us? First of all, gentlemen, this is our first caucus since Happy Liberation Day. That took place in the last few days. Happy Liberation Day on all the big, beautiful, fat tariffs and what Donald Trump is doing. But yeah, let's go from there. Andrew, what do you think? What's your initial reaction to Wisconsin? And then we'll kind of scoot over to Mason and go beyond there. I want to get you guys' initial take on what we saw: Wisconsin, Florida, voter ID, Supreme Court, and all the mixed bag.
I think that what we saw, Ryan, and you illustrated this a little bit, or pointed to it, let's say, is that the GOP has not earned the trust of the Trump voter. And Trump voters came out big for Trump in 2016. They came out big for him in 2024 with over 77 million people voting for Donald Trump in November. But that same enthusiasm isn't guaranteed to go towards GOP issues or candidates. Okay. So that's the first thing. And that might not seem like a big deal, right? Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Right. But it actually is a really big point to make, because I think the working hypothesis has been that the GOP is just banking on Trump voters. They're like, oh, they voted for Trump, 77 million. The game's changed. We got this in the bag going forward, as long as we don't start a war or have an economic collapse, etc. But that's not the case. Here in Florida's 1st congressional district, where I live, there was a Democrat, Gay Vallimont. Yes, that's her real name, Gay Vallimont, and Jimmy Patronis, who were running for the seat that Matt Gaetz gave up. And Gay Vallimont raised $6.4 million. Jimmy Patronis raised 1.2 or 1.3. Now, most of that money Gay Vallimont raised, of course, was external DNC money, Soros-style money, that kind of stuff, right? That's expected. But she came pretty close to Jimmy Patronis. Now, he won by quite a bit, but where I live is like super conservative. I mean, when I say conservative, it's extremely conservative. Santa Rosa County, immediately to the west of the county I live in, was historically, it's been dubbed the most conservative county in Florida.
You might as well be Alabama. Let's be honest.
Yeah, might as well be Alabama. And Gay Vallimont got like 70,000+ votes, and Jimmy Patronis had like 90-something thousand. So it wasn't like a total smackdown. It was a pretty good win. But it shows that there's still a lot of energy, a lot of Democrat voters out there. That was a special election, and people have election fatigue and this, that, and the other. I understand that. But when you take that and you combine it with what you see in Wisconsin, and some of the things that are going on with just hints of what are voters going to do when Trump's not on the ballot, it's not obvious that these are going to be slam dunk wins. And I think that the lesson here is that what Donald Trump brought about through MAGA was a complete shaking of the political order. It was a great reset in a good way, not the Klaus Schwab globalist reset, right? It was a undoing and starting again of conservative politics, okay? It's not typical GOP talking points. It was America first. It was no nonsense. You get what you pay for. Populism. That was really kind of the overarching theme of it. And that appealed to people because we've had people who are GOP rhinos, we call them neocons, whatever, who say one thing and do another. Trump was the opposite of that. He had the outsider effect, and that was really powerful. But there's the name recognition, the trust behind Trump the man. And if you have that, it seems like you have a lot more political power. But like you said, Ryan, in your opening, once Trump pulls away, I don't think he's going to run for a third term. It's going to be JD or it's going to be somebody else. They're going to have the support of Trump. They're going to have the endorsement, but it's not going to be the man's name on the ticket. And there's a lot of issues with that when it comes to energizing voters. So that's the problem. What's the solution? I think the solution is that the GOP has to have that great reset. That I can't even believe I'm using that phrase, but they have to have that remaking of themselves. And I don't think that can happen unless there's a total cutting. So like in my backyard right now, there's tons of weeds. I'm planting grass. I don't just keep the weeds there and put the grass in because the weeds are going to choke out the grass. Mm-hmm. You put brush killer and wipe it all out and start afresh. You lay new soil down, new topsoil, so that this grass seeds have an actual chance of growing and giving life. The same is going to have to be true for the Republican Party. And no, I'm not saying we gas out and, actually kill people or, wipe them out, but a political wiping out. Okay. That is going to have to happen. And it's going to have to be with Trump-like people who maybe don't have a background in politics. So I think that is the path forward. It's totally tearing down the GOP, rebuilding it on the principles that the Constitution was founded upon, limited government, all that stuff, not rebuilding in a new image, going back to what works, and then actually having people who will follow through with that in a Trump-like way. Unless and until that happens, just taking normal GOP people and slapping a Trump endorsement on it, I don't think is going to cut it.
Yeah. By the way, now is the time to I'm sorry, Mason, I want you to give me your 2 cents, but now is the time to regain the oh my gosh, I just lost it. The great reset phrasing. Cause it's not exactly cutting edge anymore, but just in the last few days, Klaus Schwab is going, he's stepping down as the chair of the World Economic Forum. You guys heard this, right? You saw this news. Klaus Schwab is gone. So we can still invoke his accent just for fun, the World Economic Forum, but he's gone. He's stepping down. I say gone. I don't know if he'll actually leave a position of influence, but now is the time for us to seize the great reset language for us because old Klausy baby is headed out, at least in name, over at the World Economic Forum. Before we move on, Andrew, what's the deal? Give me your take on Matt Gaetz. You're a very recently former constituent of his. He resigned really fast, and then they pulled his nomination really fast. Now, if we've seen anything from this whole Elise Stefanik stuff, they really are willing to actually change course if it seems like a bad idea politically, which I think taking her out of the House is a bad idea politically right now. Good for the Trump administration on that, pulling her. But here's my question. Was he too early to resign? Was he really just trying to get out from under this ethics probe because they were coming for him to shove him under that? What's the deal? Do you have any insight on that? Because he's now gone off and he's a show and he's doing this Anchorman podcast, right. But what in the world happened with Matt Gaetz? Do you have any insight? And then Mason, I want you to give me your opinion on Wisconsin and kind of where we are, your top level view.
With Matt Gaetz, I honestly have to say I have zero clue. And I've asked a lot of people who are politically connected in this area as well, like, what in the world happened with Matt? And they're like, I don't know, still love him, but I don't know what's going on. I watched the show. It's great. So it is still a mystery, and no one knows. The working hypothesis amongst people that live in this area that I talked to was, he's going to run for governor, right? But then that got totally cratered when Trump came out and endorsed Byron Donalds and said, run, Byron, run if you decide to take a leap for the governor office there. So I don't know what the play was. At first, I thought, well, you nominate Matt Gaetz to attorney general. I thought that was a sincere nomination. And then the ethics probe stuff was going on. There was a lot of stuff brewing. But when you start to kind of look at the history of how the deep state does these character assassinations, it's not typical for them to have something really juicy and then just sit on it, and then not dump it. You think if they actually had something that good and then Trump nominates him to attorney general, that they're not going to make some sort of a deal. They're just going to dump it out, right? Because the people who do this kind of character assassination stuff, the scruples aren't really there. And it's also really hard to keep that kind of stuff under wraps just from a journalistic, tight information knowledge of how secrets work. It's really tough to keep that stuff behind closed lips, if you will. So I don't think there was really anything super significant. Maybe stuff that looked bad, but wasn't criminal that they had that they could drum up. But I don't think there's really any smoking gun there against Matt Gaetz, because if it existed, it would be out already. And there's a guy I know, for example, who ran for office. He had some stuff in his past. That stuff was threatened against him. They said, hey, we're going to release this if you decide not to, if you decide to keep running, we're going to release this stuff. If you resign, then we won't release it. He resigned, and then they released the stuff. Okay, so there's that sort of bargaining doesn't really work. So I think Matt Gaetz still has a future in politics. I don't know what that is. He still might run for governor. We can't roll that out. He is still really popular here in Florida. I think that Byron, with the presidential endorsement there, is also a really strong choice. But I hate to say all that and then end up with the statement, I don't know. But I really don't know. But what I do know is that I don't think they have a smoking gun against him. And I don't think this whole thing was to avoid some massive scandal, because if there was such a thing, I think it'd be out already.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we're not going to make you, we'll use a future episode to beat you into submission and give us insight as to whether you're going to be Team Byron or Team DeSantis dynasty. But that can be later. That can be later. Mason, what's your high level view on Wisconsin, and what are our lessons where we go forward, or what pieces of the conversation do we really need to have first? I guess give me your high level thought.
Well, to very, very briefly on the Matt Gaetz thing, somebody told me something that I thought was very, very smart, that no senator in their right mind would have voted, like under normal circumstances, would have said, yes, let's make Matt Gaetz attorney general, just because he's like so much of a hothead and like a firebrand. So that was a way for Trump and Vance to figure out which senators were going to be completely loyal, which means that the ones that were like, yeah, I'll vote for Matt Gaetz, the Trump loyalists, they knew that they didn't have to focus on those ones, on their votes for anybody else, which I didn't think of that. Somebody told me that, but I thought that was a very wise observation. Anyways, regarding Wisconsin, Trump, the difference between Trump and like republicanism, like I don't know anybody who calls themselves a Republican. All my friends who are conservative or on the right or anything like that, I don't really know if I know a single person that would say, yes, I am a Republican. Like I know plenty of conservatives. I know mostly conservatives, but there's a big difference between those things. And when I think Republican, I still really think Bush and Romney and Pence, and those are Republicans. We are socially conservative and fiscally conservative, and and we also believe in endless wars in the Middle East. That's a Republican to me. Whereas Trump is not really a category at all. He's an individual, and the entire nation watched him go through the hero's journey over the course of 8 years, almost a decade, watching him become president, and then everything falls apart, and then everything keeps falling apart and keeps falling apart. And then he's successful once again. And it's a very inspiring story, no matter who you are. And I think that speaks to a deeper level of the average person than, here are my policies, but more like, the entire apparatus of the government came after him, and then he got shot in the head, and he just persevered anyway. Who isn't going to like that? Like with the Mark Zuckerberg clip after he got shot, saying that was like the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Thank you. Family friendly. Yeah, we all know Mark Zuckerberg was more impressed than that, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, he was much more impressed than that. But yeah, people come out for Trump because Trump has impacted the psyche of our nation on a very deep level, and he brings out something very, very American in us. He embodies America in a certain way that your average GOP politician doesn't. And so I think the path to getting people to show up for these very important elections, whether it's referendums on the state level or Supreme Court or congressional races, special elections, all the primaries, everything we have that has been happening over the last couple of weeks and that will be happening over this year and up to November 2026. It's important that I think that Trump draws attention to those as not just, hey, this is, you're a good citizen, be a good citizen, get out there and vote, because that wasn't really working. And saying that is not why people showed up to vote for Trump. That's not what happened at all. It's because people recognize that, oh, this is a critical moment for our country, and they saw some very important things that they needed to deal with, such as immigration, I think first and foremost, and Elon Musk getting out there after taking over the biggest social media platform in the world and saying that this is the most important election in American history. That's what got people out there, that, okay, this is a fight and Trump is at the center of it, and this is for the future of our nation. And showing up once every 4 years for a presidential election, not that hard to do. But people don't really understand, like the average voter, that even if they're not a Republican, but they do like Trump and they did vote for him, they don't care about the civics aspect of it, but they need to be told, okay, this is part of the same fight. Like, we're still battling the deep state, and normal people that aren't political junkies are going to have tuned out by now that, okay, Trump's in office and might not be totally up to speed with everything he's doing, because what's going on for the most part is he's trying to plow forward with his agenda, and he's getting checked at every single level by the courts. And whether it's directly electing judges or state legislators, the voters have a say in that, and they can make an impact there. They just don't know it. And a lot of people don't know that there's this big interplay between all the different levels of government, from the federal to the local level, and that Trump's actions are having pushback at all those levels. So I don't think I think they need the opposite of a civics lesson of, okay, this fight is still going on. Like, we're in a battle for the heart of our nation, and we need you to take part in that. And I think that what Elon Musk has been doing is Elon poured a lot of money into Wisconsin, and it wasn't totally successful, but he was also doing get out the vote stuff for the presidential election, and that was successful. Get out the vote measures from Elon are very good, because what Andrew pointed out in the gubernatorial election, or no, not the gubernatorial election, the
Supreme Court.
No, the one in Florida.
Yeah, special congressional.
Yeah. The gay candidate had way more money, like 5 to 6 times the amount of money, and that's consistent across the board, that Dems have to pour way more money to get similar or equal results. Like, they have to, because if you look at what's going on the left right now, the amount of political intensity is a lot lower than it was in 2016 and in 2020. I mean, there was one protester outside the Capitol on Inauguration Day. Like, they do not have near the political intensity that they had before. And if you the people doing all the phone tracking, that, oh, hey, 80% of the people at every Kamala Harris rally were at every other Kamala Harris rally. And it's the same people showing up to every sort of left-wing Democrat rally pretty much anywhere across the country. Like, they rely very heavily on psyops and getting people to have this severe emotional intensity that on the level of, like, oh, the Trump is putting kids in cages. Like, that's what he's doing to the migrants. But that doesn't work anymore, because in 2024, the migrant crisis was so bad and people were feeling it on such a direct level that they were like, okay, but this is a much bigger problem. It's not just a kids in cages thing. And they can't get people that emotionally intense over tariffs. It's like trade deficits. Nobody like cries over trade deficits. Like, find me a blue-haired 19-year-old who's going to have an anxiety attack because of anything regarding international trade. Like, that's just not going to happen. But like, they get super invested with, whether it's Palestine or like kids in cages, like they'll freak out over that. You can't get them into international trade. So Trump saying, I'm going to have a third term and I'm going to have tariffs across the board. Like, that doesn't ramp up the emotional intensity. So a big part of it is we can compete with, we're pretty good at competing with them. And if it was on an even playing field, the Republicans would probably be winning, but they've had this whole, and we are winning in a lot of cases, but they have this whole apparatus of the slush funds and all the money that come, the Soros bucks and the USAID bucks that come in from the deep state, and those back everybody. Those pay for the nonprofits that do the ballot harvesting to win these elections. Those pay for the propaganda and the ads, et cetera, et cetera. They pay for the pallets of bricks that show up in random places. Now, the sources of that money is drying up with the Doge initiative, and that'll take a little bit of time to feel the impact of that. But and it won't exactly be successful if the courts are checking that on every single level. But I think that's what one of the most important attack vectors is, because they won't be able to keep it up if the amount of money pouring into all their election machines is diminishing quickly. Like they won't be able to keep it up because people do not have the emotional intensity to get out there, and they generally won't care as much. So I think there's really two ways that the Dems could take it going forward over the next 2 to 4 years, is either ramp up the extremeness, but I don't think that's going to work because I don't think people care as much anymore. And they've been trying to do that by saying, oh, Elon Musk is taking away money from mothers with starving children. Like that's all that the government spends money on. And Elon Musk cutting money means like there's single mothers with starving children that are starving now. But just basic transparency is kind of like diffusing that narrative of, okay, we'll just put up exactly every dollar that we're saving. Where was it going? Oh, this was like going literally nowhere. This was money just getting lost. And that kind of dampens that down. You can't get the same emotional intensity on that kind of thing. So I doubt that the left will be successful in ramping up the extremeness of it. What I think is more likely is that they try to go for a more moderate center. That we see Republicans going full like kind of Trump vibes, being over the top and crazy and loony, which I hate personally. But I think we might see people on the left start going for Trump vibes, not as much in the the looniness of it, because that's the more intense side, but moderating themselves to get closer to economic populism and toning down on the wokeness, not being as socially leftist. And I think that's where they're going to have the most success going forward, by positioning themselves as more moderate.
And see, right now, you look over at Congress, we're not necessarily seeing that. You're seeing Democrats kind of go to crazy town. The younger version of the Democrats are going to crazy town. And if the older version doesn't come along with it, they're going to be out the door. I highly expect Chuck Schumer to plan to not run again in 2028. I don't think we're going to hear that announcement now. I think it'll be later on. But I mean, Chuck Schumer's only usefulness to the Democrat Party right now is as a big money-making, a fundraising operation. But the young, wild, radical wing of the party does not seem to give a hoot about him or about the old guard. And I keep seeing a trend of, I think the left is going to go to Looney Town more and more. And I really think that's going to hurt them. But the question is, does that actually help us, or does it only help us in presidential races? Let me ask you both this then. So what I hear from you, Mason, is it sounds like we need not only we'll call them the swing voters, the low propensity Trump voters, which is wild now that we on the right have become the party of low propensity voters. But the low propensity Trump voters need a civics lesson. They need to understand why the Supreme Court matters, why special elections matter, why April matters just as much as May or August or whenever your primaries are, matters just as much as November. These are the stepping stones. We need you guys to get involved. That's number one. But I hear from you, number two, when it comes to young people, our age and down, I'm going to lump myself in with you guys, even though I outrank you by a few years. Not that many, though. Single digits, to be clear. Single digits, no big age gaps. If the Republican Party is synonymous to you with what I would call the neocon globalist era of the Bushes, does that mean that we need a different vehicle than the Republican Party? Or do we need to overhaul the Republican Party even more than we already have to a new version of it? Is the name just toast? I mean, we talked about this. What was it back in the first term? Leading up to it. No. After we had all this infighting and the old Republican deep state essentially was fighting Trump from the inside, a bunch of people had new political party. There's a lion instead of an elephant. We're going to have the MAGA party or the America party. Is that actually a need? Because there have been times, we've always been a two-party system, but we have not always had the same two parties. There have been times in our past where an old party has died, a new one has risen to take its place. Heck, we're one of those. One of the most recent ones, the Republican Party 150 years ago. And I say we, I mean, all of us generally identify as Republican voters, even if we're not card-carrying members. That's our side of these two choices. Is it time for a change in the Republican Party structure, or is it time for a change from the Republican Party? What do you think?
Well, I think that getting rid of the Republican Party as a whole and building something new isn't a bad idea, actually, because you have to look at it this way too. It's like tearing down the Republican Party isn't like tearing down the Constitution, for example. It's not something that is a sacred pillar to our Republican form of government. The first Republican president was Abraham Lincoln, so that's a long time ago, but it's not founding fathers. Okay. So it's not like the founding fathers designed the Republican Party in mind or something when they formed the Constitution. So, if anything, actually, they would not be for the Republican Party or the Democratic Party if you go by, George Washington's farewell address, for example, which warns against factions and political parties as a whole. Now, there's a practicality element to that where we've had multiple generations of people go through government indoctrination camps, and the idea of not having a two-party system and just having individuals run as individuals and learning about their character and worldview, that might be too jarring for our population to accept, as unfortunate as that is. But rebuilding it actually would not be a bad idea. I would be totally okay with getting rid of the Republican Party and creating the Lion Party or whatever you want. I've seen some of those ideas that you referenced as well, Ryan. But if you do that, it's got to be based on constitutional principles. It's got to be based on nationalism. You don't want to rebuild something and then in that rebuilding lose any sort of positive elements. So I think that is definitely a good way to go. But the civics lesson element of this is huge. And this morning I interviewed Congressman Bob Onder, who you guys know very well. Woo-hoo. And I talked with him. Yeah, he's great. He's your congressman. That's right. He's also my parents' congressman. And he's just really super. And I talked with him for about 15 minutes. And we published that interview on on libertysentinel.org. And that's out now. And he just spelled out a lot of the stuff Congress needs to do, and maybe we can talk about that later, things Congress needs to do to advance the president's agenda, because there's only so much he can do in the executive arm. He can talk about, tariffs, but he can't do anything with tax cuts without Congress, right? No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, repealing the 16th Amendment. These are things that are going to take congressional action. Defunding agencies, congressional action. They hold the power of the purse. This is Article 1, Section 8, right? Very basic constitutional literacy. But my very beautiful and intelligent wife made a good point the other day. And she said, I talk to people at work who are Trump supporters, or, we talk to people at church who are Trump supporters, and they genuinely have no clue who their congressman is. They couldn't even name who their congressman is. And it's unfortunate. Like, we hate to say that, but it is a reality where there are people who have Trump stickers and Trump hats, and they're actually like motivated enough to wear a hat or get a sticker. And then you say, like, who's the governor of your state? Who's your congressman? Can you name both of your senators? You know what I mean? And they can't. And there's one liberal guy, I forget his name, but he went to a Trump rally, and what he was doing was malevolent in nature. I'm not supporting his work, but he went around and asked Trump supporters, are we a republic or a democracy? What are the first three amendments in the Bill of Rights? Basic civic questions. And it was a gotcha thing, right? Of look at how dumb these people are. But
and they just post the dumb ones too.
Yeah, well, and they just post the dumb ones too. That's right.
And both rallies are full of all kinds of dumb people.
Right. And that's definitely true.
That's
definitely true. But the point is, you had people who were showing up at this rally, who waited in a long line, who had Trump gear on, who were rah-rah Trump, and they couldn't say anything of intelligence about, the Constitution or any sort of civics. Now, is that every Trump supporter? No, of course not. And as Mason referenced, when you look at the Kamala rallies, or you look at the Tesla protesters, these are repeat offenders, most likely on some sort of a payroll. It's a PSYOP type of a thing. So I'm not trying to be that guy to say, both sides are equally dumb. There's definitely more going on. But the point of it is that you have Republican voters or Trump voters who don't actually know that much about our system of government. They don't actually know that much about the Constitution or anything like that. And it comes back to the greater issue, which is we can talk about GOP strategy and we can talk about the Constitution, et cetera. But if we don't get education right, all of this is in vain. So we also need to be focusing on, homeschool freedom. We need to be focusing on getting people out of government schools and going to private schools or homeschools. I think homeschool is the gold standard. That's my favorite. But I'm not opposed to a good Christian private school or something that's non-governmental, right? That is a huge battle and maybe the most productive thing we could do long term, maybe not immediately, but long term to fix this issue, because we have literally millions, multi-generationally, of Americans going through a system that says America was formed as a white, colonialist, racist, pile of trash government, and founding fathers were slave owners, and Trump's a racist and oppressive, and this, that, and the other, and you get that style of education, and you do that long enough where people aren't going to be able to recognize or be able to see what really is going on. They're too indoctrinated through what they were educated with, through the media that they're told to trust, and they've just become cogs in a wheel, and they continue to be workers. And that was the whole point of the Prussian model behind our educational system, which was founded by John Dewey and Horace Mann. It was to create workers. It was to create little minions, not free-thinking, independent, sovereign American citizens. So the GOP needs a rebrand at the minimum, if not a total overhaul or destruction and replacement. That needs to happen. And that's like the immediate response. And then the long-term response is fixing what's going on educationally in our country and actually get students to learn the Constitution, to learn what America is really about, and to get the government out of education. Because if we don't fix that, then another psyop's going to happen, or some other big crisis is going to happen that's pulled by globalist elite puppet masters, and the political pendulum is going to shift. And then what we did is going to be, wiped out with the stroke of a pen of a next administration, for example. So we have to get this education issue right to fix the problem long term. And private schools, and particularly homeschools, I think, are the way of doing that. And we need to do that at the local level and get that message out for the future.
Mason, can we fix the Republican Party's image issue? Can we redefine and rebrand it, or is it too entrenched in the last 150 plus years, really the last 40 years of globalist history? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're definitely right that we are a two-party system, and that those parties have shifted. But also, when the newest one is 150 years old, and that is more than half of our country's history, like it might not be as much of a situation where we can pivot as easily. It's not so simple anymore. Like we could maybe try a rebrand, give it a new name instead of the grand old party, call it like the Grand Nationalist Party, or the something, just anything new, anything new. You could just call it the Nation Reform Party. Like just find some like boring name for a party, but just calling it something different, I think, would do a lot. Because people want something new and fresh, and Republican and Democrat are like old and stale. So something new and fresh, and being like, okay, well, this is like the continuation of the whole Trump thing. And we're going to keep doing the whole Trump thing. Like, even though Trump is gone now, because he is going to pass away within the next decade, probably. And
he's going to live forever unless they stop making Diet Coke.
Yeah. Well, that's the hope. The hope is that he's working on a, cryogenic freezing chamber, and that he can continue to be president, but he will just like wake up once per year, give a year's worth instructions, and then go back down. And, we have 1,000 years of Trump.
That would be a heck of a 24 hours of Truth Social posting.
Yep. But yeah, we need a way to uphold Trump's legacy. And but it's kind of even hard to say what Trump's legacy is going to be. Now, personally, I'm very bullish on J.D. Vance being the future of the right in America, and I think it's really up to him to form the Republican Party into something that's going to be successful in the long term. I don't think that necessarily has to be a rebrand. I don't think it's possible to get rid of it and build a new one. I would like that, just like Andrew said, that probably is the best thing, but I don't think that's feasible because they're so entrenched. I mean, this is where all the money goes into politics. It either flows through the Democrat door or the Republican door, and like that's the whole political machine right there. So it's not going to be so easy to just delete and then open a new one. But I think it's a matter of what kind of coalition that Vance builds over the next 4 years, and we should definitely talk about that too. Like,
right,
where does Vance fit into the future of?
I was going to say, before we get to Congress, I'd love to do that, because I mirror it. I don't know, Andrew, where you fall. I did not have J.D. Vance on my radar really before last July. he was there. He looked like a good senator. I loved his story. I knew the hillbilly elegy thing. I still need to read the book. I still need to see the movie. I have not done those, but I've skimmed them. And I was like, oh, cool. Unique American story. Really good. Looks like a way better choice in Senate for the Senate in Ohio than what we had. And then seemed to do pretty well. But then last year, 2024, he really rocketed to the scene. And the more that I saw of him, the more that I liked. And then I really started realizing, oh my gosh, I could actually envision this being the future of the Republican Party. And also, how awesome has it been to have a millennial? No offense, Zoomer people, but how awesome is it to have been a millennial at the national level of politics, tweeting for himself, sharing memes, and also going back to Augustinian thought processes here. Like, this is just, he is the total package. But anyway, I'm sorry. I have a man crush on JD Vance, just a little bit. We also look alike. We have the beard thing going on. I'm not going to get into it. I may have face swapped it at someone else's suggestion. But I really actually see, though, just in all seriousness, for the very first time, I see a credible future of the Republican Party, because Trump's policies to me are a mix. Some of them, I love them all. Well, almost all of them. I mean, not IVF. That last week's episode, you go and watch or listen to last week's episode. I'm not getting into IVF. I like almost all of Trump's policies. Some of them, though, are not really long-term policies. Some of them are fixes for now, corrections on our course that we've been doing wrong. But Trump himself, the whole package, cannot be the future of the Republican Party. He may be cryogenically preserved from McDonald's and Diet Cokes, but he's not going to be around forever. Who is that next branding? And honestly, I wasn't thinking about that or seeing anyone until JD Vance walked on. And even if it's not him, I am all of a sudden acutely aware that we need a future of the Republican Party in sight. And that future, I am now acutely aware, post-Wisconsin, needs to be able to engage the low propensity right-wing, we'll say pro-America voters, and make them understand Civics 101. We need you to play with us in the rest of these things too. Not just the one time every 4 years. You got to come in. I think JD is actually a pretty cool person to lead that. But Mason, you actually, postulated a question to me that maybe he's just supposed to be some sort of transitionary figure. I don't know. Andrew, you got any thoughts you want to jump in with before potentially we do this? And then I do want to get to Congress before we close down, because I think that's a big part of this. Congress's nuttiness and the infighting, replacing members of Congress. Can they actually codify some of this stuff? Otherwise, no one trusts them and we lose the future because Trump just did what he did and we lost it all. Before we get there, though, Vance, Andrew, what do you think? And then give me your hypothesis after that, Mason.
Yeah, I'll save most of my time and thoughts for the Congress thing, because I have a lot of that. But I do think JD's the obvious heir apparent. I like him a lot. I support that. And I have no qualms with that. But yeah, it's going to take somebody who's younger, who has that good vision, who can articulate things clearly. It's got to be JD. I mean, the only other option is maybe Vivek, but I know a lot of people have their qualms with Vivek, and he's going to go be the governor of Ohio, and that'll be fine.
I believe you mean JD, the governor of Little India. He doesn't want Americans anymore. Yeah, no more Americans.
That post really killed
Americans.
Yeah.
That was bad. Really that was to me a very big misread of Trump world.
That was the end for him. That was the end for him. I agree. I hope he doesn't become governor of Ohio. Like, I want somebody. Like, I'm anti him on every level.
Yeah. Well, so I think JD is the heir apparent there. And, it's just like, too, he's got the meme ability. He can take that and run with it. I mean, the whole Zelensky thing and the memes that came out of that with him sitting on the couch, kind of scolding Zelensky, and the memes that were born out of that. And, he posted some of them, and he understands the game. I want to see more. Everything I've seen, I've loved. So 2 thumbs up from me.
Yeah. My read on it is you can tell that he is probably the smartest person in the room, in almost every room he walks into, like, just by the way he tweets. Like, this guy has a brain the size of the country, probably. I mean, he's like smart. I mean, just look at his history. Like, he figured out how to get out of being a nobody and struggling out of rural Appalachia and making something of himself, and then getting into law, and then pivoting from law into venture capital, and getting into the tech world, like semi-tech adjacent world, and then becoming a senator and one of the youngest people to ever be elected to the Senate, and now vice president of the United States. Like, he is on a rocket ship going up, and he's very smart. And he first got on my radar because it was back when he first got onto the scene. It was like, oh, here's these two people backed by the dark wizard of the right, Peter Thiel, Blake Masters and JD Vance. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, I like Peter Thiel and his dark right-wing wizardry, so I'm into these guys. And that's how I first heard of him. And I wasn't even thinking he'd be best for vice president, because I thought there is no way that good things happen. Good things don't happen in the world. Everything is bad, so there's no way JD Vance will be the vice presidential pick. And then he was the vice presidential pick, and my faith in history was restored. But yeah, one very important characteristic that differentiates him from really everybody else out there that is even an option for an heir is that he doesn't have an ounce of griftiness about him. Because somebody might say Don Jr., but it's when I hear Don Jr. on an ad while I'm listening to the Tucker podcast, I'm like, I don't want a guy who's getting paid to do ad reads for podcasts to run for no, thank you. I'm just not interested. Nothing against Don Jr., but that's not what people generally want. But you can tell Vance does not have an ounce of griftiness in him. He's very smart, has very good political instincts. And I think that he and Trump are definitely both cognizant, and a lot of other people, as to how everything looks for him over the next 4 years and setting him up for success after then. And I think that's a big role that Elon Musk serves, because Elon is so involved that in a lot of people's minds, he's probably taking the place of vice president. So when Trump and Musk do something bad, people are like, grr, Trump and Musk, and don't even think about Vance, people that might have issues with what they're doing. So, I mean, I hope he can position himself well going into it. I'm using most of my time for this because I have less to say about Congress, and Andrew has more to say about that. So we can continue on to that.
No, and I think that's, if there's anything I can point out to this, I just say, thank the Lord above for Donald Trump choosing well 2 times in a row, if I can, because as much as I dislike Mike Pence, even more now than ever before, 2020, I very different flavor in my mouth than I used to for that man. But as far as electoral politics, Trump chose well. In 2016, he made a very smart political move that was for the now. I need traditional conservatives to feel comfortable with me. Mike Pence will help fulfill that role. Heck, Barack Obama did that in 2008 with Joe Biden, made the traditional Democrat side feel a little bit more comfortable with him. It was a very smart political move. 2024, Donald Trump is coming like a freight train, and it doesn't matter. He could have picked no one. He could have picked himself as vice president, and guess what? People would have voted for him. But what did he do? He didn't make a choice for now. He made a choice for later. He picked a young, very solid conservative voice to potentially, give the power of incumbency to. That was not a 2024 decision. Donald Trump picking JD Vance was definitely a 28 and beyond decision. And I will forever be thankful to Donald Trump for that, because he, I think, is really trying to set us up. Whether JD is the right choice or not, this could be a separate conversation. But Trump picked JD for later. He picked Pence for now. He has done well 2 times in a row in my mind. He's not thinking of himself. It's very obvious. He's thinking of what works and what wins. And I got to say, kudos to him for that. Okay, but let's switch over to Congress, though, in our remaining time here, because we do like to keep it crisp for people. And I'll remind you, midway through, folks, if you're listening on the podcast, once you're done, go and give us a rating and review. Take a screenshot, post it to social media. You can find us, tag us. I am on X, is where we're mostly, I think, active, at Based Ryan Height, at Real Dr. Monzo, at Andrew 1 Muller. You'll find us over there. Of course, also unauthorizedcaucus.com. You'll find the links for those socials. Post it, let people know. If you're watching on Rumble, hit the like button and share it with a friend so you can get their thoughts on our thoughts on your thoughts. No, their thoughts on our thoughts, and then your thoughts can talk with their thoughts. There's a lot of thoughts. It's thoughtfulness, people. It's Thoughtful Caucus today. But moving into Congress, really, we could talk about JD Vance and the future of the Republican Party, but here is now. You guys and I and everyone listening, we could fight to rebrand and change Republican Party politics and to get people to understand Civics 101 and why April matters just as much as the primaries, matters just as much as the November, and how they're all connected and how we have to be involved at each of these levels. But if Congress continues to mess around over freaking proxy voting and not bothering to do things to codify Trump's incredibly voluminous and awesome executive orders, nobody is going to give them the time of day, and no one is going to give a majority in the House or the Senate to a party that is willing, even if they're not capable, of playing ball with Trump. And that's going to bring a lot of stuff to a halt, because the Democrats will bring their A game to stopping what he is doing. And that is, in fact, worse than feckless Republicans being in charge. So what does Congress need to do other than the obvious stuff? Like, it really is. I appreciated so much last week, the big fight, proxy voting came up, and I looked and I'm like, no, I don't want you to have proxy voting. I think that's unconstitutional. Michael Knowles did an excellent job. I saw he posted. If you're not familiar with this, you go and look it up later. That's on you folks to go and see. But, proxy voting, there was a young Democrat mom who wanted to vote on the House floor, and Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who I don't particularly trust. I haven't really had a good, feed on her since she entered Congress. She and a few other Republicans revolted. There was a big fight over it. I actually have to say, I agree with basically what Michael Knowles said, that this lady on the floor, after giving birth, I was faced with an impossible choice, she said, voting versus caring for her newborn. And I love Michael Knowles is like, no, she didn't. She didn't have a choice. Newborns need mothers at home. Constituents need legislators in Congress. Life entails limits and responsibility. I'm reminded of our boss, Phyllis Schlafly. Even you, Andrew, because you're a Teen Eagle alum. She said always, I had it all, just not all at once. These two things are equally true. No, I think proxy voting shouldn't happen. It's unconstitutional. And yes, I think legislators should, in fact, move forward and get things done and not just hold up the floor because we didn't get the rules package that we wanted. That was a stupid, boneheaded move. And I think that, frankly, that's mostly what we're going to see from Mike Johnson when the rubber meets the road, is Bible verses and boneheadedness, half of which I like, but I find disingenuous if you can't figure out how to actually make something happen. Where does Congress play into this, and are they going to kill the midterms for us?
Yeah, so a few things here on Congress. One, just at a surface level, we think of all of these things Trump has done, right? The Department of Education thing, right? Everyone thinks, okay, Trump eliminated the Department of Education. Wrong. No, he did not. It still exists. Okay. Mm-hmm. So he gutted the bureaucrats. He got rid of some employees. He changed around some of the finances. So, loans are now going through the Treasury, and things with special needs kids are going through HHS and this, that, and the other. But it still exists. And he knows that. And so does everyone else with any sort of sense or brains, because the Department of Education was created through an act of Congress. So it'll take an act of Congress to remove it. So where's the House's leadership here in presenting things to get rid of the Department of Education? This is obviously the direction we're heading. The president signed an executive order there, massive mandate in November. Haven't seen any traction on that front, even though I did ask Bob Onder about it. He's on that Education and Works Committee. He said that they're committed to getting this done and that there is things in the works. So I appreciate that and trust that. But it just doesn't seem to be any sense of urgency. There seems to be little sense of urgency. Same with the United Nations, right? Trump got us out of the WHO. He got us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. He looked into our involvement in UNESCO, a handful of other things. It's going to take a congressional act of Congress to get us out of the United Nations. Now, Chip Roy and Mike Lee have introduced bills, the Defund Act, to get us out of the UN. That needs to be brought up for a floor vote. Maybe it doesn't pass. I'm not saying it does pass, but at least let's try, because let's work under the assumption that we're going to lose the midterms, because we don't know if we're going to win. And historically, parties that win the executive lose in the midterms. So let's operate under that assumption. We have 570 something days to make this happen. Where's the leadership? Another thing, all these different agencies, USAID, where's the defunding for that? Different elements of the intelligence agencies that need to be looked into and maybe defunded. Where's the congressional leadership there? So all these things combined just makes you wonder, where's Congress? And people say, well, maybe they just aren't in session. Well, no, they've been in session all of January, all of February, and all of March, give or take a few days here and there. But they've been in session more times than not. Same with the tax cuts, right? Everyone's like, oh, the president's going to mess up the economy. What's President Trump going to do with all these tariffs and Liberation Day? And it's like, well, he can do the tariffs and all that's positive, but you're not going to get any tax cuts unless Congress makes this happen. No tax on overtime, Congress. No tax on tips, Congress. Getting rid of income tax, 16th Amendment, Congress. So don't put all of this on the feet of the executive. Congress is going to have to take some action here. And the sad truth is that we still have tons of people who say, yeah, I love Trump in Congress, but they're not willing to stick their neck out and actually get this stuff done. And will it pass the Senate? Great question. I don't know the answer to that. A lot of this might not, but let's at least try. And then the people who oppose it, let's say, okay, so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so opposed getting out of the Department of Education or passing no tax on tips, overtime, or income. That person is in complete opposition to what 77 million Americans voted for and what the president's leadership is. Let's get them primaried and, start replacing some of these folks. Let's start that vision. And Congress hasn't done any of it. I'm looking at the bills introduced in Congress right now. They're coming up for floor votes or floor discussions in the next couple of weeks. And it's veterans, it's, memorial things, it's more veteran acts. It's things that have nothing to do with any of the issues I just talked about. Authorizing the use of Capitol grounds for the National Peace Officers Memorial Service. It's like, okay, but where's all of the other things we just talked about? Now, there is some positive things too. The SAVE Act introduced by Chip Roy, which would require, some sort of ID when voting. That's positive. That's not a bad thing. And then we also have the NORRA Act, which is the No Rogue Rulings Act, which just passed through the House Judiciary Committee, which would stop some of these rogue justices from attacking what the president's doing. But again, these are still low-hanging fruit. We need to hit some of these higher items, and it all comes back to Congress. So people need to get educated on this. They need to be calling Congress. They need to be calling all of their different representatives and saying, hey, the president's doing the right thing here. We need you to take up the mantle and progress it in your branch of government, particularly in Congress. So that's my rant in a nutshell. But we're not going to see any sort of meaningful change unless and until Congress pushes some of this through, because these EOs can just be overturned the next time, let's say, we lose. But passing laws in Congress to overturn some of this stuff, that's a little bit more serious. Just think, the Department of Education, the United Nations. These are things conservatives have been railing against for decades, and it's been really hard to fix it because they're actually laws passed in Congress. If they were just executive orders, we would have fixed them already. So it does show that the power of the legislative branch is real, and unless and until they wake up and realize that, we're going to be in dire straits. But I don't want to throw them completely under the bus, because I do think they're making efforts and working on it. And it's like you and I were talking about offline the other day, Ryan, with what's going on with the FBI and the CIA, with what Dan Bongino said. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. I totally recognize that, but there just doesn't seem to be any energy that we can tell. And I hope that becomes more apparent soon.
Yes, I hope it does as well. And
I hope you're okay and that ambulance isn't coming.
I am. Yeah, I muted myself real quick there for a second so y'all could hear the ambulance. I think that thankfully our listeners missed at least some of it. But welcome to my office, where the ambulance is trolling around downtown Clayton reach a fever pitch. This is what happens when you have zero grass and stuff created by the Lord, and it's all man-made. It echoes. It's terrible. Anyway, I hate the city. Sorry, I'm not going on that rant. But Mason, before I hop to you, I'll say this. This is one of those moments where I look and they really do have to get some of this stuff done, because part of me says the Trump administration is so quickly and savagely dealing blows to government. It's not just like they're doing here we tinker with this, but then if we lose the next presidential election, someone's going to tinker it back. It's not like the Mexico City policy. Trump takes it away. Biden reinstates it. Trump takes it away. They're actually shattering entire agencies. So even if, for the federal Department of Education, even if they haven't completely buried it, because first of all, Congress created it. Congress has to break it. They have to be the ones to repeal it. But also, frankly, there's education funding mechanisms that precede the Department of Education. Titles 1 through 10 aren't going away just because the Department of Ed does. There's so much to do. If they still fire everyone, sell the building, shut it down, move on, it's not like someone can just come back in and turn it on. They're turning off so much and breaking it behind them. It's going to be difficult for the left to just waltz in if they get the next presidential election and redo it all over again. That said, I also recognize they might probably not just What they did through 2021 through 2025 will probably look like chump change compared to what they would do the next time, exercising power, building agencies. They're not going to pussyfoot around anymore with the Ministry of Truth that they're like, we're going to throw this out there and then Nina Jankowicz is going to get her job taken away. No, they're just going to full bore go tyranny mode, because Donald Trump is going full bore, repeal the 20th century mode. So I look at it and say, okay, it really may be time for using the system against it, like we did in 2024 with voting. I don't like early voting, but if that's the system and I can't change it, use it to crush them and win. Well, I don't like omnibus bills, but that's what Trump tweeted about last week too, or Truth about, the one big, beautiful bill that he says is going to permanent tax cuts, spending cuts, energy, historic investments in defense, borders. They're wrapping it all into one. And I go, I don't want this. I want single issue votes up and down. But if my idealism is not happening, I will take the incrementalism of a victory, a win. If they can pull an omnibus bill in Congress and they can beat people into submission to vote for it because so many things are hooked to it, but it gets done a lot of this agenda, I will support that. Let it be known I would rather take a win than just being right and sitting in the ditch. Thank you, Mason, for that imagery that you've given me. I can be right and sit in the ditch, but what's it matter? I'd rather win and be on the way to right. Really, what's more effective, or what's better, being effective or being right? Well, both, hopefully. But it's. I wonder if this is not the time where we, as the constitutional conservatives, are going to have to really kind of let off the gas of some of our idealism and how Congress ought to exist. Which I love Tom Massey, but Tom Massey is a purist moment, and the rest of us just need to mash the gas on the let's do it this way, even if I don't like this way. We'll get some good stuff done, because otherwise, we're losing 2026, we're going to lose 2028, and then we are going to lose the country. And really, like, I'm not sure we have another 4 years in us for someone else. I can't almost believe we survived the last 4. I don't know if we have another 4 in us, because it's just getting so drastic what they are willing to do. So, I don't know, Mason, Congress thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with the things that have been said so far. I mean, I think that they should not be inactive. I had not looked at the upcoming bills that will be voted on, so I was a bit shocked to hear that there is so little going on that let's approve the grounds for this memorial service. I mean, I'm sure that memorial service is important. I'm also sure that it is not as important as implementing the American First agenda. So, that's all I have to say. A resounding agreement with everything that has been stated so far. Dissatisfaction with the state of things.
Well, then let me ask this as our final question, and we'll kind of wrap it up here. I think, tell me if you two would agree or disagree. The big key is young people. The big key is 35 and under. We need 35 and under to get politically active. Let's put it in order. I need 35 and under. I think this is the key to winning 2026, 2028, and saving the country. We need 35 and unders to get civically educated as to what needs to be done and where it matters and how it all connects. We need them then to get politically active. And then we need the Republican Party, or whatever vehicle we have, we need to decide if that's the Republican Party. And if not, then another part. We need the vehicle to be laser focused on the pro-America message. And this is one of the big pieces 35 and unders, I think, are really responding to, and JD Vance feeds into it beautifully. Not just here's our set of policies and here's the way we're going to do it. He's really moving into we do these things because it is a part of our American identity to do this and do this way. And this is the heritage of that identity. And this is our land, and these are our families, and these are our jobs. And gone with the bottom dollar libertarian version of globalist, policies. This is why we have tariffs. No, I have tariffs because the bottom buck is not the bottom line. I need my nation to survive, and me to have a job, and my children to have jobs, and for life to, be preserved in this country. That's not just bottom dollar economics. That is national identity, and we have one as Americans. How possible are these things to attract the 35 and unders? Is it actually something we can do? And then what are the top steps? What do we need to start with? Because that's really where it is. All three of us work in politics. Not everyone listening does. So for those of us we're clarifying what we need to be doing as some of the premier conservative organizations at the front of these issues, talking to folks in Congress, folks in the administration, folks down on the ground. But for the folks down on the ground, what do we do? What is the first step to figuring out how to make that happen? Because people are asking me that question here in Missouri. What do we do? What do we do to get these 35 and unders? And I don't want to have a 1 hour discussion as the answer. We need to be able to boil that down to an elevator speech. What do we do? Andrew, last word.
Okay. So last word. It's everything we said throughout this whole call. It's
the 1 hour discussion. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's everything. Yeah. I mean, it is though, but it's taking that and making it a real message. It's not grifting, right? I think that something that is so telling about our generation is that we smell the grift very, very quickly. Anytime we feel like we're being sold a political speech or any sort of a product, let's say, whether that be a policy or an ideology, we can sniff it out really well. And maybe we don't understand the history and the context and all that kind of stuff of those things as well as we should, generationally speaking, as a whole. But we can smell the real from the fake. My dog's jumping up on me here. But yeah, we can smell the real from the fake. So I think that just making this message very transparent, very honest, very real, that this isn't about preserving power for long periods of time for a certain group of people who have a letter by their name. This is about preserving for us and our future posterity complete liberty and freedom of the American dream and the American vision that was created by our founding fathers. The dog's really distracting me here. But we need
to have higher priorities than this. Go play with her.
Yeah, she needs to be played with. That's right. But we need to focus on that. And that needs to become just a bigger point, that this isn't about politics. It isn't about power. It's about liberty. And we want to live quiet and peaceable lives, as the scripture says. And the best way to do that is through this sort of political philosophy. That's what the founding fathers set up. That's freedom. That's liberty. That's individual sovereignty. That's less government, more responsibility. That is the mission. And I think that young men in particular are hungering for that sort of moral clarity. And that's why we see a big return to, the Catholic Church, or we see a big return to, the Eastern Orthodox Church, because young men are looking for tradition. They're looking for meaning, what Jordan Peterson talks about a lot, that people are drawn to, disengaged young men. And there's a place for them in this movement. It just has to be articulated that way, that this is about continuing the American dream, the American legacy for you and for your kids. And you're not going to be called a racist or a bad person or anything for doing that. And even if you are, those are from the grifters and don't pay attention to it. And that needs to be the message. So I know that sounds real simple, but I do think that there is a truth to it. And JD could be a great banner bearer for that, just for who he is and how he's lived his life and his story.
I have a different.
So yeah.
No, and you touch on it. I'm going to go pull up for the notes an episode we did last summer with a very quiet intern stuck between me and Mason. But I mean, we are now starting to see phase 2 of the question we asked last year. Are we finally seeing young men say, I'm done. I'm done with being shoved in the corner, with being destroyed, with being told I am toxic, because I'm doing what the Lord created me to do, to build, to explore, really to build. And we need to rebuilding the Republican Party, rebuilding America. That's what we're talking about today. Mason, last word.
Yeah, well,
that's not true. I'm going to take the last word real quick after it. But
I'll have the second last word. It's like I was texting you, Ryan, the other day when you asked for my 2 cents, and I sent 10 paragraphs about how young people want to be part of what's cool. And it used to be cool to be like, yeah, I'm into like LGBT stuff. Like, I'm cool. I'm into like fighting Islamophobia. And now, like, thinking of those things as cool, like those are extremely cringe now. Like that was really dominating in the space of young people, because that was like the thing. And like young people, especially young women, are going to gravitate towards whatever is socially dominant, and young men will play along with whatever the young women like, just because that's how society works. So, like, aesthetics get to your brain a lot faster than words do, and good aesthetics is really the key to getting your young people on the right side, because young people are so exposed to memes and the look of things so constantly, and that's why we have that grift sniffer ability. We like to see, here are the people that are handsome, happy, cool, and having a good time. We want to be part of that, and the people crying about stuff are not any of that. Whereas now on the right, that the right is kind of taking over what that is. So I think that's what we need we need more of that and less of Nancy May showing off the liberal tears energy drink. Like that's the opposite of what I'm talking about. Stop doing that. That's going to make people like, nobody likes that. Nobody.
Nancy Mace does not make me want to vote Republican.
Right. That's an old person's idea of what a young person likes, and that is never right. Because to use Andrew's analogy of young people switching over to more traditional faith traditions, the old person's idea of what a young person likes to get into faith is very modern stuff. You go to the youth mass, which is 5 p.m. on Sunday at a lot of parishes, and that's the one without any traditional chants. That's the one with the acoustic guitars and all that, which is not what young people are looking for. Young people are more attracted to aesthetics, people in general, but sincere, honest, non-pandering, good aesthetics will draw people in much better than anything calculated or grifty.
Yeah. And we've talked about that quite a bit, that the young people smell out the grift really fast. And, I think that's going to serve us well over the next few years, because there's certainly been quite a bit of that thus far in Trump, but it's getting harder and harder to grift off of it. If you're not a true believer, you get exposed pretty quickly. At least I feel like it looks pretty quick. So maybe to your point, I am in fact one of the young people again, still, who can see it. Oh man. Guys, I think we'll stop it there, because this conversation could go on and on and on. But I think the reality is the how do we say it? The our American identity crisis. You correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I would say our American identity crisis is finally getting attention and getting a little bit of an answer. Our Republican identity crisis is just about to snap, and we're going to be in the full throes of it. And I greatly hope that if it's not the Republican Party, if it's by a different name, or if it is the Republican Party, I appreciate the legacy that we have here. It is varied. It has changed quite a bit. And I'm okay with that. Whatever the standard is that we bear, though, the American identity needs to come through loud and clear. And politically, whatever our political party identity is, which that's good. Political parties are good. It's a band of people who kind of have a common purpose, and you unify together. I think that's a good thing. That's got to get figured out. But these are the issues that we got to look at, and it's coming fast. It's coming very fast for us. So work. The work is here. Work on the special elections, work to email your congressman, work to email your senators, work to go to town halls and Lincoln Days and whatever you've got in your area. This is where we really have to go full bore civics 101, founding fathers, get involved again. Otherwise, we're not getting this back. I hope that a lot of people realize that. I hope this discussion sparks those of us to tell the rest that don't know it yet what they don't know and what they need to know. I think that's it. All right. For the good of the order, we'll close out the caucus, as unauthorized as it may or may not have been. There's going to be a few links. I've got some stuff that's going to be in the notes. Folks, you want to go and get a hold of that. Unauthorizedcaucus.com is where you'll find all of the notes and the links, the resources for this episode. You can subscribe there to make sure you don't miss any notifications on it. But podcasters, like I said, go and hit that 5-star rating and review. That'll give us a big boost. Very appreciative. If you're on Rumble watching, you can hit the like and the share button. Subscribe to the channel. You want to support what we're doing. There's some great companies, T-Rex Inc., Wide Awake Clothing down in the links below. Go and click those. It's a good way to support us, or you can do it directly on Substack or on Rumble. But the main thing, support America, support the politically inclined people around you, and get more to be involved. That's the message. This is just a discussion point, a starting. Maybe we'll come back. We'll do a 5 or 6 month checkup on this, or sooner, depending on what happens. How about that, gentlemen? We'll figure something out. All right. Go over there. Also, don't forget to go to libertysentinel.org. That's where you'll find Andrew and his day job, what they do. The New American as well. He's a writer over there. NewAmericanMag.com. Is that right? TheNewAmerican.com. What's the website, Andrew?
TheNewAmerican.com.
TheNewAmerican.com.
Right.
Along with if you're watching on Rumble, an absolutely adorable dog who wants to be a part of the discussion. TheNewAmerican.com. Yes. LibertySentinel.org is where you find Andrew. And then, of course, we're over at Unauthorized Caucus. Folks, have a good week. We'll talk to you on the next one. It'll be another week. It'll be
caucus time.
Caucus time.